Hello and welcome to another edition of the Ask Dr. Patel Show, where we help people find answers to chronic health issues, chronic health conditions. So today we're going to do a research update. This is kind of exciting stuff because research is really starting to pour out, especially on certain subjects here regarding a specific virus. So, I would say kind of this is a time where doctors can lose their license, get in trouble for portraying vitamin D in a way that is not approved by the government. I hate to say that, but even these researchers have to be really careful with any suggestions that any supplement could ever help cure, prevent any disease. So it is a caution thing, but these studies keep piling up. I mean, you can't ignore them after a certain point. And they're not only, they're just from numerous countries. It's really kind of getting to the point where it's difficult to ignore the evidence. And I would also say that, just looking at certain things, vitamin D supplement sales in big companies, if you look at these major companies that sell vitamin D, their sales of vitamin D are skyrocketing. People want vitamin D. And so really just here recently in these past 11, maybe 12 days, we're seeing some studies come out here where doctors are saying, hey, this is pretty crucial stuff here. So the first one that's just come out recently is in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, which is, in the United States, that's like number one. And this research, which was really just published on March 19th, it examined the relationship of vitamin D levels to the likelihood of testing positive for COVID-19. And the study looked at like 3,000 patients at the University of Chicago Medical Center. And basically they had their vitamin D tested 14 days before they had their COVID test. And basically what they found is that when people had like levels that were 30 on their vitamin D, if you've ever looked at vitamin D on your blood test, all the way from zero, the range is all the way from 0 up to 100. Again, you can go higher than 100, but may not want to go excessively. There's different, we won't talk about that right now. But the thing is, when you're down in the 0 to 30 range, you might as well say 0. That's really not much in your system at all. It means there's some definite problems. But these researchers were considering 30 sufficient. And then they found that people who were in the 30 to 40 range, in that lower range, had a 2.64 times higher risk of testing positive for COVID-19 than people who were above 40. So if your vitamin D was above 40, your risk went down quite a bit. So very important there. And then let's go, technical difficulty here, to the next study. And this study was out of a journal called Frontiers, and which is another medical journal. In this study, they found there's a 5-fold increase in vitamin D intake needed to adequately fight respiratory tract infections. So kind of interesting there. And this was in the United Kingdom. And these researchers, they were reviewing research, or what's called meta-analytical evidence on respiratory tract infections. And they found that people who had lower levels of vitamin D, that correlated with an increased risk of developing several immune-related disorders, including respiratory infections and COVID-19. So this research was just published in March 25th. And like I said, this Frontiers in Nutrition, and these researchers determined that, vitamin D intake would need to increase on most people by like 500% to adequately protect against respiratory tract infections. So the proposal was, hey, with this pandemic going on, since it does mainly affect the respiratory tract, could this coincide that people need more vitamin D to help support their immune system? So yeah, again, if you're a nerdy guy like me, this stuff excites you. Okay, and then we have another one here, and this was number 3. So in this study, basically out of Lancet, which again, very prestigious medical journal, they're saying vitamin D supplementation offers protection for groups vulnerable to respiratory tract infections. And, they found that supplementing vitamin D provided protection when compared to placebo groups. And they had basically 43 randomized placebo-controlled studies, and they were examining the relationship between vitamin D and these respiratory infection patients, 49,000 participants. And they said that these doses between 400 to 1,000 international units for 12 months was considered moderate and was found to be very safe. Again, very low amounts they're studying, but even with the amounts they're studying, they're saying this is boosting a range of innate antiviral responses while simultaneously dampening down potentially harmful inflammatory responses. So pretty exciting there, pretty big stuff. And these researchers are just really noticing, hey, respiratory tract infections in general, and the result, again, they're not saying, hey, does this always apply to COVID-19? But yeah, really what they're saying is it does, because this is the reason why they're looking at a lot of this. But it's saying, of course, in all of these, but requires further investigation. That's so they don't get in trouble, and I get it. But the thing is just seeing these studies come out, just seeing that vitamin D plays this big role that's not really being talked about at all. And these 3 papers are on top of just so many papers that have come out in the last year on vitamin D. And really, it's just not being investigated enough. Although the information's there plenty, they're not really telling the public, hey, and even when it was suggested, hey, maybe we should start screening everybody for vitamin D levels, because we're finding out it directly correlates with this COVID issue and people's susceptibility. And of course, what I've read about the response to that from governments is no, we don't want to do that. So I know, frustrating. I won't get on my soapbox any further there, but definitely consider vitamin D. Of course, talk to your doctor before taking anything, but vitamin D, extremely important for immune system health, and extremely important for a lot of other things too. All right, well, hopefully everybody enjoyed this research update, and God bless, and I will talk to you next time.